This question that we have goes like this. This year, our community faced the realities of not only the evictions of Sheikh Jarrah in Palestine, but also conflict that arose in the region. Palestinian lives were lost. How would you ensure the rights, dignity, and freedom for the Palestinian people? You have 90 seconds starting the clock now. The floor is yours.
There are many issues that we're seeing that really have to do with just human rights violations that we're seeing with the Palestinian people. Everybody should have a right for self-determination and to have a self-governance. And so we have to rally with our allies to ensure that the Palestinian people are enjoying the same human rights, the basic human rights that we stand in and believe in. So one of the biggest things that I want to do is ensure that we have protections. Palestinians, just like everyone, have a right to be safe and to be protected. And that's something that I take very seriously.
Thank you very much. All right. Next person that we have is going to Rep. DeBose. Let me know if you need me to repeat the question, or are you good?
I think I got it.
All right, perfect. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I think that Congress, needs to meet with the leaders. I think there needs to be a peaceful solution. But in meeting, I think that there really doesn't need to be third-party intervention in the sense of that these leaders need to come together. And again, it's really about just basic human dignity and rights and protections. And so I think as a member of Congress, I would work to foster that, to come up with a peaceful solution. Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings and we all want the same thing. And the desire is to live a prosperous and a safe life. So as a member of Congress, I would definitely work towards a peaceful solution.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And next up, we have, my apology, I'm not actually ready. All right, next up, we have Rep. Hardy. Let me know if you need me to repeat the question.
No need.
Perfect. Go ahead.
Okay. So look, if we're trying to figure out how how can we protect Palestinian lives, I think we have to look at, what is taking those lives, right? And so let's just be completely and utterly honest here. While I support providing Israel with the military aid that they need to defend themselves, I must also acknowledge that the Hellfire missile, for example, that took out the Al Jazeera building, which also housed many people and many families, that was a Hellfire missile. And we give Israel $3.3 billion annually in foreign military financing, specifically for things like that Hellfire missile, which was made in the United States and paid for by the American taxpayer. And so one thing that we can do going forward is to say, we will continue, Israel, to provide you funding to defend yourselves, but you can't use that funding in ways that don't comport not just with our values as Americans, but with our shared values as folks who care about the fundamental rights of all people, right? Human rights are for everyone, no matter who the human is. So they apply also to Palestinians, and our weapons should not be used to harm and target civilians there. So that's one thing you could do, to legislate in defense of human life. And yes, that includes Palestinian lives. Another thing we could do is to again, make sure that our ally, one of our strongest allies in the world, our strongest certainly in the Middle East, Israel, aside from the military financing, is basically treating Palestinians with respect and according to their human rights, not just with respect to these missiles, but also with respect to demolitions, evictions, settlements, which are making it difficult to form a contiguous Palestinian state if there ever is.
Awesome. Great. So Rep. Hardy, greatly appreciate that. That's great. Thank you for the thoughtful response. Okay, next up that we have is Commissioner Holness. The floor is yours, 90 seconds.
So sadly, unless there's an active conflict, the world takes its eyes off what's going on there. We must work with the international community to stay focused on how we resolve this issue. we must find a permanent solution and these conflicts will continue. One of the things that I think we ought to look to do more of is to offer incentive to both sides to come to the table. We've seen normalization of relationship with several countries in the Arab world, with Israel. We ought to use those relationships that's being built there to get both sides to the table to have a negotiated settlement. And I think that's the only way we're going to get this issue resolved. The power of the purse rests in Congress's hands. And we ought to use that power of the purse to offer incentives for both parties to come to the table to resolve this ongoing conflicts that has caused tremendous amount of issues in the region. Congress can act and must act, and so must the international community to bring about a peaceful settlement of these conflicts that has gone on for too long.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. And next up, we have Mr. Morrell. Mr. Morrell, let me know if you need me to repeat the question.
No, sir, no need.
Perfect.
I wish everyone would go back and look at the video of our previous meeting with the Jewish folks and listen to some of these politicians on this panel today, the words that they used previously and what they're using today. And that's the reason most people have turned their backs on politics, because people want to have it both ways. You can't attend meetings in Washington with conservative groups and then come out and say, because that conservative group that we talk about is an anti-Muslim group. I've been invited on numerous occasions and I have refused to go because I will not participate with these folks. As it pertains to Palestine, the starting point should be the pre-1967 war. There is no other starting point. It is the pre-67 war. That's where it should start. Because what Israel continues to do, mind you, I said it in 2013, 2014, and I said it again just recently, that any attack on the state of Israel by another nation is an attack on the sovereignty of these United States. I stand by that. But any attack on Muslims is an attack on me personally, on my ancestors. But I believe that we must stop Israel from building these settlements. We must go back to pre-67, otherwise there'll never be any chance for a lasting peace. Thank you so much.
Thank you once again for your time. Greatly appreciate it. Okay, next up we have Commissioner Sharif. Commissioner Sharif, 90 seconds, the floor is yours.
So first of all, what we need to do in Congress is to support a peaceful deal. And that means a two-state solution between Palestinians as well as Israel. When I went over for the African American Leaders Tour, I found out that Hamas has missiles launching devices set up in every other home on the Gaza Strip. And they are using families on that strip purposefully as martyrs in this war. This has been going on for hundreds of years. There is no simple solution for it, but the only solution is going to come by people going to the table and negotiating. That's going to mean land swaps. That's going to mean making clearly definable and defensible borders for both states. That's going to mean allowing for a resolution that supports the Palestinians being able to get aid like food, have access to education and clean drinking water. And that's going to require democracy to some level. And what we cannot do is get caught up in a religious war and dig our heels in and say, okay, we're just going to allow it to continue to happen. This has to end. And the only way that it's going to end is through the United States and the people in Congress taking a position that there needs to be peace, there needs to be humanitarian aid, and there needs to be an understanding between Palestine and Israel. And so that would be my position going in. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. And Senator Thurston, the floor is yours, sir. 90 seconds.
Thank you. And this is an issue that has been perplexed for a long time. But I think it has to start with the realization that everybody, every nation has a right to self-determination, security, and peace. Now, how do you accomplish that? That's the tricky part. But I think that the United States of America, with its power, being the leading country in the world, should be able to work with the allies, our international allies, to make sure that we can bring the right people to the table. Now, who determines who's the right people? Obviously, the people do. However, without a peaceful solution, there would not be any solution. So I think the first thing we do is to take any violence or any type of attacks or war has to be off the table before we can get any solution. So we have to have representatives of both sides who respect each other, who are willing to sit down and come to a solution. I think that the United States is probably the only power that can make that happen. So we have that obligation. We should be the ones taking the lead, but we do have to work with our international community to make it happen.